The Korean Mafia boss accidentally runs into his 8-month pregnant ex-wife, and the past comes crashing back. Chong-min never went to cafes. Not anymore. Too exposed. Too many windows. Too many ways for enemies to find angles. But this wasn't about choice. Seoul was drowning under rain clouds, traffic paralyzed, and his driver had taken a wrong turn avoiding a police checkpoint. When Chong-min stepped out of the black sedan, adjusting the cuffs of his navy suit, the sign above the glass storefront was the only refuge in sight. Golden Crumb Cafe. The man who controlled shipping routes from Busan to Incheon. The heir whose name alone could shut down entire districts. The syndicate prince who'd learned before his 10th birthday that mercy was a luxury reserved for the weak. He wasn't supposed to be there, but fate has a way of orchestrating the cruelest reunions when we're least prepared for the truth. The bell chimed as he pushed through the door. The scent of butter and fresh bread filled the air, warm, ordinary, safe. Everything his world wasn't. Chong-min barely registered the interior before his eyes found her. Farida, behind the counter, one hand unconsciously resting on the curve of her belly, the other gripping the counter edge like it was the only thing keeping her upright. 8 months pregnant. Time didn't just stop. It shattered. 8 months of separation, of unanswered questions, of a silence that had carved holes through his chest, collapsed into a single heartbeat. Her eyes lifted slowly. Recognition hit like a physical blow. Not fear. Not anger. Shock. The tray she'd been holding slipped from her fingers. Ceramic shattered across the floor in a symphony of destruction. The sound echoed through the cafe like a gunshot. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. Her voice, God, her voice. He'd tried to forget that voice. Chong-min's gaze dropped. Not to her face. To her stomach. The child shifted beneath her protective hands. His chest tightened violently, as if someone had reached through his ribs and twisted. 8 months. 8 months. That child. His voice cracked. Something he hadn't allowed in years. Something he couldn't afford. "Please leave." She was already backing away, both arms wrapped around her belly, shielding, protecting. From him, the cafe had gone silent. Customers frozen mid-bite. Someone whispered his name. The kind of whisper that spreads through Seoul's underworld like wildfire. His men, who'd followed without him noticing, stood rigid by the door. Sentinels. Witnesses. Chong-min moved before thought could stop him. One step forward. "You left me." The words came out quieter than he intended, stripped of the power everyone expected from him. Her laugh was brittle, broken. "You signed the papers. You erased me." "I never." Her breath hitched. Pain flashed across her features. Sharp, unmistakable, terrifying. "No," she gasped, hand flying to her stomach. "Not now. Please not now." Chong-min moved faster than anyone could track. His arm wrapped around her waist just as her knees buckled, catching her against his chest. The cafe erupted into chaos around them. If you're feeling the weight of this moment, the 8 months of lies, the manipulation that tore them apart, the baby that changes everything, you need to understand something crucial. This isn't just a story about ex-lovers reuniting. This is about deadly family politics that treat human lives like chess pieces. About blood oaths and syndicate traditions that go back generations. About a woman who disappeared not because she wanted to, but because she was made to believe the man she loved had chosen power over her. That he'd signed away their marriage like it meant nothing. That she was disposable, replaceable. A mistake that needed to be erased from the Park family ledger. She was wrong. But by the time the truth surfaces, she's 8 months pregnant, hiding in plain sight, and the man who manipulated them both, Chong-min's own cousin, is about to discover that some betrayals can't be forgiven. What happens next will test everything they thought they knew about survival, loyalty, and whether love can withstand the kind of deception that nearly destroyed them both. With Farida this close to delivery, the complications that follow could cost them everything. Life and death hang in the balance of this reunion. And somewhere in Seoul's shadows, Sung-min is realizing his carefully constructed lies are about to unravel. 8 months earlier, Chong-min woke to silence. Not the comfortable quiet of Farida sleeping beside him. Her breath soft against his shoulder. Her fingers curled loosely in his shirt even in sleep. This was different. The kind of silence that screams. He knew before he opened his eyes. The bed was cold. Her side untouched. Sheets pulled tight like she'd never been there at all. Chongmin sat up slowly, his heart doing something it hadn't done since he was a boy, learning what his family name really meant. He stuttered. The apartment stretched before him, too clean, too still. Her paintings gone from the walls. The ceramic mug she used every morning, the one with the chipped handle she refused to replace, vanished from the counter. Even the air smelled wrong. Empty. On the kitchen table, an envelope. Cream-colored, expensive paper. A lawyer's letterhead he recognized. One of the firms his family kept on retainer for cleanups and disappearances. His hands didn't shake as he opened it. He'd been trained better than that. Petition for divorce. Mutual agreement. Irreconcilable differences. His signature at the bottom. Black ink. Unmistakable. Except he'd never signed anything. Chongmin stared at the documents for 17 minutes. He counted. Control was all he had left. The signature was perfect. Too perfect. Every loop and angle matched his hand exactly. Professional forgery, the kind that cost more than most people earned in a year. Someone had planned this. Someone had wanted her gone. He should have torn the city apart looking for answers. Instead, he chose to believe the lie. Because men like him, men who grew up watching their fathers choose power over everything, who learned before puberty that love made you vulnerable and vulnerability got you killed. Men like him didn't chase after women who left. She chose freedom, he told himself. She chose safety over you. And maybe she was right to. The last night played on repeat in his mind, whether he wanted it to or not. Farida had been quiet at dinner. Her hands kept moving to her phone, then away, like she was fighting the urge to check something. To call someone. You okay? He'd asked. Fine. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. He'd known something was wrong. Known it the way you know when a deal's about to go sideways, when the man across the table is hiding a knife. But instead of pressing, instead of asking, he'd let her deflect. Let her kiss him goodnight with a desperation that should have been a warning. Let her whisper, I love you, like it might be the last time. He'd fallen asleep believing he had time. By morning, she was a ghost. 8 months of repression followed. Chongmin buried himself in work. Expanded operations into territories that should have stayed neutral. Made examples of men who questioned his judgment. Let violence become vocabulary when words felt too dangerous. His father noticed. You're taking unnecessary risks. His uncle commented. Heartbreak makes men reckless. Chongmin said nothing. Just moved shipments, controlled ports, signed contracts in blood and ink. But at night, alone in that apartment he couldn't bring himself to leave. He'd stand in the doorway of the room that should have been hers and wonder why. Why she'd run. Why she hadn't fought. Why the divorce papers had appeared with his signature already forged. Why his cousin Sungmin had smiled so gently when he'd said, Some women aren't built for this life. Chongmin. Better she realized it now. He should have known then. Should have seen the poison dressed as concern. Now, carrying Farida toward his car with her body trembling against his chest, her hands clutched around her belly. Their child. Chongmin felt 8 months of control shatter like glass. Stay with me, he murmured against her hair. Not a command. A plea. His driver already had the door open. His men formed a protective wall, clearing the street. Hospital. Now. His voice carried the kind of authority that moved mountains. But inside, beneath the power and the perfectly tailored suit, beneath years of training that taught him how to bury emotion like evidence, Chongmin was terrified, because he'd lost her once by believing a lie, and he couldn't survive losing her again. Not when he'd just discovered everything he'd been told was a betrayal designed to destroy them both. Farida had known loving Chongmin meant danger. She just hadn't known the danger would come wearing his family's face. They'd met quietly, her small cafe catering a private event at a riverside warehouse. Corporate, she'd been told. Discreet clientele. Cash payment, no questions. She should have known better when the security outnumbered the guests. But she'd been focused on her work, plating desserts with hands that had learned precision from her mother, arranging strawberries like they were jewels. When she'd looked up, he was watching. Not the food. Her hands. Chongmin returned the next morning. No appointment. No explanation. Just stood at her counter until she asked what he wanted. Coffee, he'd said. And whatever you recommend. He came back every day for a week. She learned the way his smile never quite reached his eyes, like he'd forgotten how, or been taught that happiness was a weakness. Learned that he took his coffee black, his pastries without frosting, his conversations measured and careful. She learned he was gentle in ways that terrified her. Because men who could afford to be gentle usually had power that made gentleness a choice, not a necessity. When he finally asked her to dinner, she said yes, knowing it would change everything. She was right. Their relationship existed in stolen moments. Dawn meetings before the city woke. Late nights in borrowed apartments where no one would recognize his car. Happiness measured in hours, not days, because that's all his world would allow. "Why do we have to hide?" she'd asked once, wrapped in his shirt, watching rain streak the windows. "To protect you," he'd said simply. She believed him, because the way he held her, like she was something precious and fragile and worth dying for, made her believe anything was possible. When he proposed, it wasn't dramatic. No public displays. Just a quiet promise in that same borrowed apartment with rain providing the soundtrack. "I'll dismantle the world before I lose you," Chongmin had said, slipping a simple gold band onto her finger. She believed that too, until Sungmin came. Chongmin's older cousin arrived like poison dressed as medicine. Polished suit, warm smile, eyes that calculated worth in fractions of seconds. He found her at the cafe during closing, when her staff had left and she was alone counting receipts. "We need to talk about my cousin's future," Sungmin said, sliding into a chair uninvited. "And why you're not part of it." The photographs came first. Chongmin dining with a beautiful woman. Foreign investor's daughter. Sungmin explained. Engagement rumors. Political alliances that families like theirs didn't refuse. "He's choosing survival," Sungmin said gently, like he was doing her a favor. "And you, Farida, are the cost." She wanted to argue, to fight, to call Chongmin and demand the truth. Then Sungmin placed the divorce papers on her counter. Chongmin's signature already there. Black ink. Unmistakable. "He was going to tell you himself," Sungmin continued, voice dripping false sympathy. "But business called him to Busan. He thought this would be cleaner." The threat came last, wrapped in pleasantries. Her cafe. Her mother's medical bills. Accidents that didn't look like accidents. Fires that started in commercial kitchens. Suppliers who suddenly refused to deliver. "Sign," Sungmin said. "Disappear quietly. Everyone walks away intact." Farida signed, because loving someone meant protecting them, even from yourself, even when it shattered everything you'd built together. 2 weeks later, staring at the positive pregnancy test, Farida understood true isolation. Chongmin was gone, or so she believed, her cafe barely surviving, her savings dwindling, and inside her, a child who would never know its father. She made the only choice she could. She stayed hidden, stayed silent, stayed alive, and prayed that somehow, the man who'd promised to dismantle the world for her would never discover the truth. Because if he did, if Chongmin learned what his cousin had done, blood would paint the streets of Seoul. The hospital lights were too bright, clinical white that burned through closed eyelids. The smell of antiseptic and fear. Machines beeping steady rhythms that measured heartbeats, contractions, the fragile line between crisis and control. Farida lay trembling on the gurney as doctors moved with practiced urgency around her. Voices clipped, professional, detached. Blood pressure elevated. Fetal heart rate accelerated. "She's in preterm labor. Stress-induced. We need to stabilize before." Chongmin stood at her side like a statue carved from rage and terror, his hand wrapped around hers with a gentleness that contradicted everything his world knew about him. He hadn't let go. Not in the car. Not when they'd rushed her through emergency doors. Not when nurses tried to move him aside. One look from him and they'd stop trying. 8 months, the doctor said, reviewing charts. "Any history of complications?" "No," Farida whispered. "Recent trauma? Emotional stress?" Silence. The kind that screamed. The doctor's eyes moved between them, taking in Chongmin's expensive suit now wrinkled, his face stripped of the mask men like him wore in public, taking in Farida's white-knuckled grip on his hand, the way she couldn't look at him. "I see." The doctor's tone shifted. "We're administering medication to stop the contractions. Bed rest. Minimal stress. She needs calm. Chongmin's jaw clenched so hard Farida heard his teeth grind. She'll have it, he said quietly. Promise that sounded like a threat. I kept a journal, Farida continued quietly. Wrote letters I knew you'd never read. Told the baby stories about their father, the parts one chose to remember. The mornings you'd show up before anyone else. The way you'd watch me work like it was the most fascinating thing you'd ever seen. I did find it fascinating. His thumb traced circles on her palm. You created things. Beautiful things. Everything I touched, I destroyed. That's not true, isn't it? Chongmin's voice carried weight. My world is built on control, manipulation, fear. You were the only pure thing I'd ever had, and I couldn't even protect you from my own family. I should have fought harder, Farida whispered. Should have called you. Demanded to hear it from your own lips. He threatened your mother, your cafe, everything you built. Chongmin shook his head. You did what any intelligent person would do when facing a predator. You survived. We both lost 8 months.
No.
His grip tightened fractionally. I lost 8 months. You carried our child alone. Went to appointments alone. Made decisions alone. Felt every kick, every movement, every moment. Without me there to share it. His voice finally broke. You were scared and pregnant and thought I'd abandoned you. That's not loss, Farida. That's theft. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for what was stolen from both of us. She shifted on the bed, making space. Chongmin looked at her, uncertain. Lie down, she said. You haven't slept in 24 hours. I'm fine. Chongmin. Her voice carried the kind of authority that surprised them both. Lie down. He moved carefully, settling beside her on the narrow hospital bed, not touching beyond necessity. Hyper-aware of the foreline, the monitors, her condition. Farida took his hand and placed it on her belly. For a long moment, nothing. Then, movement. The baby kicked against his palm. Once, twice. A tiny fist or foot pressing outward, as if testing this new presence. Chongmin went completely still. His breath caught. That's your child, Farida whispered, reminding us both what matters. His forehead dropped to her shoulder. Not quite an embrace. Not quite reconciliation. But a beginning. The doctor came hours later, reviewing charts with cautious optimism. Contractions have stopped. Fetal heart rate normal. Blood pressure improving. She looked between them. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Stress was the trigger. Calm is the cure. After she left, Farida felt Chongmin's quiet laughter against her hair. We don't do calm, she said. We'll learn. His hand remained on her belly, feeling every movement. For them, we'll learn. Outside, Seoul moved through its daily chaos. Inside, two people began the slow, painful work of rebuilding trust from the wreckage of betrayal. 8 months stolen. But a lifetime ahead, if they were brave enough to fight for it. 3 weeks of careful peace shattered at 2:47 a.m. Farida woke to pressure, familiar now but different, deeper, insistent. Her hand flew to her belly as the contraction built, tightening like a fist around her spine. Chongmin. He was awake instantly. 3 weeks of sleeping in her apartment. Security stationed outside. His empire run from her kitchen table had made him hypervigilant to every sound, every shift. How far apart? This is the first. She breathed through it. But it's different. It's... Another contraction hit. 7 minutes later. His phone was already out calling his driver, calling the hospital, moving with the controlled precision that built empires and ended threats. But his hand shook when he helped her stand. The hospital became their world again. Different this time. Not crisis, but culmination. Labor progressing naturally, steadily. Hours measured in centimeters, in breathing patterns, in the grip of Farida's hand on his. Chongmin didn't leave, didn't take calls. Existed entirely in this room where his power meant nothing and biology followed its own ancient rules. I can't do this, Farida gasped during transition, tears streaming. Yes, you can. He pressed his forehead to hers. You've done everything else alone. But not this. Never again. When she screamed, he didn't flinch. When she cursed him, their situation, the entire universe, he took it. absorbed every ounce of pain he couldn't carry for her. Helplessness was new to him, terrifying. Prayer came next, not to any god he'd been taught, not formal, not structured, just desperate bargaining in the silence of his mind while nurses coached and monitors beeped and Farida's world narrowed to the singular focus of bringing life into chaos. Keep them safe. Both of them, please. At 6:23 p.m., their son entered the world screaming. The sound cut through everything. 3 weeks of careful reconciliation, 8 months of separation, years of control and violence and carefully constructed walls. A nurse placed the baby on Farida's chest. Tiny, furious, impossibly perfect. He's here, she sobbed. He's actually here. Changmin couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only stare at this impossible thing. 7 pounds of life that existed because of choices made in love and torn apart by lies. Do you want to hold him? The nurse asked gently. He nodded, not trusting his voice. The baby was impossibly light. Changmin had held weapons, signed documents worth millions, controlled men's fates with a gesture. Nothing had ever felt this heavy. His son, stared up at him with unfocused eyes. Tiny fist curled against Changmin's chest. Completely helpless, completely trusting. Something in Changmin's chest cracked. Not broke, opened. I missed everything, he whispered. The words scraped out of him, raw and bleeding. Your entire existence. Every moment your mother carried you. Every fear she faced alone because I didn't know. The baby made a small sound. Not quite a cry. Almost curious. I can't give you those months back. Changmin's voice fractured. Can't erase what was stolen. But I swear, on everything I am, everything I've built, you'll never doubt you're wanted. You'll never question if your father chose something over you. Tears fell then. Silent. Unstoppable. Farida watched from the bed, seeing Changmin transform. The syndicate heir, the feared name, the man who built empires on control, reduced to trembling wonder by 7 pounds of new life. What's his name? The nurse asked. Changmin looked at Farida. A question. She smiled through exhaustion. You choose. He studied his son's face. Thought about what this child represented. Not just love, but survival. Proof that truth outlasts lies. That some things can't be destroyed, only delayed. Minjun, Changmin said finally. Gentle and talented. Everything his parents aren't, but everything will fight to let him become. Hours later, when Farida slept and Minjun rested in his arms, Changmin made his decision. He'd built his power in shadows, operated through fear and careful distance, kept everything important hidden to keep it safe. But hiding hadn't protected them. Secrecy had made them vulnerable. Tomorrow he'd announce them publicly. His wife never ex because the divorce was forged void, meaningless. His son, his family. Let the syndicate adjust. Let rivals calculate their moves. Let the entire underworld know. Changmin had something worth more than power. And anyone who threatened it would learn exactly what a man becomes when he has everything to lose. Outside, Seoul continued its endless rhythm. Inside, a family began. 8 months late, scarred by betrayal, but alive. And that was enough. Changmin called the meeting for noon. Not at one of the usual locations, neutral restaurants, private clubs, warehouses where business happened behind closed doors. This time, he chose the Grand Joseon Hotel. Public. Visible. A ballroom that seated 200 with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul. He wanted witnesses. Every family head received the invitation. Every allied organization. Every player in Seoul's intricate web of power and consequence. They came because refusing Changmin's summons was suicide. They came expecting territory negotiations, new alliances, the usual chess game of empire building. They didn't expect Farida. She stood beside him at the head of the room, holding Minjun against her chest. No longer the woman who hid in a cafe. No longer the secret kept safe through distance. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back, her presence quiet but undeniable. Changmin's hand rested on the small of her back. Claiming, protective, public. The murmur that ran through the room was immediate. Confusion, calculation, the subtle shift of men reassessing power dynamics. Changmin let them look, let them whisper, let the moment stretch until silence fell naturally. I won't waste your time with formalities, he began, voice carrying effortlessly across the space. You're here because I'm making something clear. This is Farida, my wife. Pause. Let it land. Not my partner. Not my associate. My wife. Mother of my son. The person whose safety now determines how this organization operates going forward. Someone in the back, one of his father's old allies, cleared his throat. With respect, Changmin, we weren't informed of a marriage. Because it wasn't your business. His tone remained pleasant. Lethal. What is your business is understanding that any threat to her, to my son, to anything they build or touch, will be treated as a direct attack on me. The room went still. The days of keeping my family hidden to protect them are over. That strategy failed. Nearly cost me everything. Changmin's gaze swept across the assembled power. So we're trying something new. Visibility. You all know she exists. You all know what she means to me. That's not vulnerability. That's warning. His father sat at one of the front tables, face unreadable, watching his son rewrite decades of protocol in real time. Golden Crumb Cafe will expand, Changmin continued. 3 new locations over the next year. Full security. Full protection under our name. Anyone who thinks that makes it a target should remember what happened to Sungmin. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Questions. No one spoke. After the meeting, his father approached. You're exposing them, he said quietly. Making them visible makes them vulnerable. Hiding them made them vulnerable, Changmin corrected. Sungmin operated because he thought I'd never acknowledge them publicly. Because secrecy gave him room to manipulate. His father studied Farida, who stood nearby speaking with one of the few women in the organization. A rare conversation, genuine and careful. She's not what I expected, his father admitted. She's stronger than all of us. Changmin shifted Minjun to his shoulder, the motion already natural after 2 weeks of practice. And she deserves better than shadows. The old families won't like this change. The old families will adjust. Changmin's voice carried the weight of finality. Or they'll be replaced by families who understand that evolution isn't weakness. 2 men didn't adjust. One vanished from Seoul overnight. The other found his operations systematically dismantled over 72 hours. Suppliers, protection, accounts, all evaporating like morning fog. The message was clear. This isn't negotiable. Hours crawled past. The contractions slowed. The baby's heartbeat steadied. Medical staff came and went in waves, checking monitors, adjusting for drips, speaking in hushed tones that didn't hide their curiosity. Everyone knew who he was. Everyone understood what his presence meant. Changmin didn't leave, didn't take calls, didn't acknowledge the messages vibrating his phone into silence. He slept sitting up in a chair designed to discourage comfort. His hand still tangled with hers even in exhaustion. When Farida woke in the gray hours before dawn, his eyes were already open, watching her like she might disappear again. I never signed anything. His voice cut through the darkness between them. Farida's breath caught. What? The divorce papers. Changmin leaned forward, elbows on his knees, close enough that she could see the shadows carved beneath his eyes. I was sent to Busan. Emergency situation with a shipment. When I came back 3 days later, you were gone. The papers were on my desk with my signature already there. But, her throat closed around the words. Your cousin told me you were protecting me by letting me go. That you'd already chosen. Sungmin. The name fell like a stone into water, ripples spreading outward. Understanding slammed into place with the force of a physical blow. He showed me photographs, Farida whispered. You with someone else. He said you were getting engaged. That I was a liability. Changmin's voice was flat, emotionless, the kind of empty that came before violence. He told you I was choosing the family over you. Yes. And you believed him. It wasn't quite an accusation. More like grief. He had your signature, Farida said, tears streaming now. He threatened my cafe, my mother. He said if I didn't disappear quietly, accidents would happen. He made it sound like he was helping both of us. Silence stretched between them. 8 months of manipulation crystallizing into terrible clarity. Changmin turned away, already reaching for his phone. The call connected on the first ring. "Find him," Changmin said into the receiver. His voice carried no emotion. "Norai." Nothing human at all. "Find Sungmin. Track every property, every account, every person he's contacted in the last 8 months." A pause. "Do not kill him." Another pause, longer this time. "I want him breathing when I arrive. I want him able to speak, able to understand exactly what he's taken from me, what he tried to destroy." He ended the call, turned back to Farida. For a moment, she saw the man beneath the monster, the one who'd promised to dismantle the world before losing her, the one who'd kept that promise just 8 months too late. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't." Changmin's hand found hers again. "He did this. He forged documents. He lied to both of us. He stole 8 months of our child's life." His voice finally cracked. 8 months I'll never get back." Outside, Seoul woke to morning. Inside, 2 people began understanding the true cost of family betrayal. And somewhere in the city's shadows, Sungmin's carefully constructed lies began to unravel. Sungmin confessed quickly. Men always did when Changmin looked at them without emotion. When the mask of civilization fell away and something older, colder stared back. The apartment, one of Sungmin's many properties, luxury wrapped in glass and steel, had become a cage. Changmin's men stood at every exit. Silent, professional, waiting. Changmin sat across from his cousin in the pre-dawn darkness, perfectly still. He hadn't raised his voice, hadn't touched him, didn't need to. Fear worked better than fists when applied correctly. "The signatures were easy," Sungmin said. Words tumbling out like confession might save him. "I had access to your office, your documents, lawyers who don't ask questions when the price is right. And the photographs? Stock images, professional editing." Sungmin's hands trembled as he poured himself whiskey he wouldn't drink. "The investor's daughter was in Seoul for meetings. I made sure you were photographed at the same restaurant on the same night. Different tables, different times, but angles can lie beautifully." Changmin said nothing, just watched. Let silence do the work violence used to. "The Busan emergency was real enough," Sungmin continued, desperate to fill the quiet. "I just ensured you'd be gone long enough. 3 days. Long enough for her to believe the story. Long enough for her to run." "Why?" The question hung between them. Sungmin's face twisted, something ugly surfacing beneath the polish. "Because you became soft. Venom now replacing fear. You started choosing her over family decisions. Started questioning operations because they made her uncomfortable. Started believing love was something men like us could afford." He laughed, brittle and broken. "She made you weak, Changmin. And weakness in our world gets people killed. I did what the family needed, what you were too blind to see. You forged legal documents, manipulated 2 people, stole 8 months of my child's life." Changmin's voice remained flat, factual. "Because you decided I was weak. Yes. And you believed you'd never face consequences." Sungmin's confidence finally cracked. "We're family. Blood protects blood." "Not anymore." Changmin stood slowly, buttoning his suit jacket with careful precision. "By morning, every account bearing your name will be frozen. Every property deed transferred. Every business partnership you've built over the last decade will receive documentation of your creative accounting practices." Sungmin's face went white. "You can't. Your protection within the family is revoked. Effective immediately. Every favor owed, every alliance secured through our name, gone." Changmin adjusted his cuffs. "You'll keep your life, but you'll lose everything else." "Changmin, please. The syndicate operates on trust. You broke it, not just with me, but with everyone who believed family loyalty meant something." He moved toward the door, then paused. "You wanted me to be stronger? More ruthless?" Sungmin said nothing. "This is what strength looks like. Not violence, not rage, precision, control. Taking everything someone built and dismantling it piece by piece while they watch, powerless to stop it." "Why let me live?" Sungmin's voice was small now, stripped of the polish and poison. Changmin looked back, and for a moment, Sungmin saw something worse than anger in his cousin's eyes. Pity. "Because death is mercy," Changmin said quietly. And you don't deserve mercy. You deserve to live long enough to understand exactly what you destroyed. To watch me build a life with her while yours crumbles. To see my child grow up knowing their father fought for them. He opened the door. That's the punishment. Living with what you've done. Seoul's streets were empty as Changmin's car cut through the city. Dawn painted the sky in shades of gray and gold. Somewhere, markets were opening. Bakeries firing their ovens. The world continuing as if everything hadn't shifted. His phone vibrated. Updates rolling in. Accounts frozen. Lawyers filing documentation. The machinery of consequence grinding forward. Changmin ignored it all. Because Farida was awake when he returned to the hospital room. One hand resting on her belly, eyes tracking him as he entered. Is it done? She asked quietly. Yes. Did you? He's alive. Changmin sat in the chair beside her bed, taking her hand. Ruined, isolated, powerless, but alive. She studied his face. Because death would be too easy. Because our child deserves a father who chooses justice over revenge. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Even when revenge would feel better. Outside, Seoul woke to a new order. Inside, two people began rebuilding what betrayal had tried to destroy. And somewhere in a luxury apartment, Sungmin understood that some punishments last forever. The hospital room settled into something almost peaceful as dawn broke fully over Seoul. Monitors beeped their steady rhythm, for fluid dripped methodically. Outside the door, Changmin's men maintained their vigil. Not against external threats now, but against interruption. Inside, silence stretched between two people learning how to exist in the same space again. Farida traced patterns on her belly, feeling the baby shift and settle. Changmin watched from his chair, still holding her other hand like he was afraid she'd vanish if he let go. When did you find out? He asked finally. 2 weeks after I left. Her voice was soft, careful. I took 3 tests, kept hoping they were wrong. Were you afraid? Terrified. She met his eyes. Not of being pregnant. Of being pregnant and completely alone. The words hung between them, an accusation and a confession all at once. What was it like? Changmin asked. The first months. Farida's breath hitched. Do you really want to know? I want to know everything I missed. So she told him. About morning sickness that lasted all day. About her first ultrasound. Seeing the tiny heartbeat alone. Crying in her car for an hour afterward. About choosing a doctor. Filling out forms with blank spaces where a partner's name should go. I felt the first kick during closing, she said. Dropped an entire tray of pastries. My staff thought I was losing my mind. When was that? 16 weeks. Changmin's jaw clenched. For months pregnant. For months of their child growing, moving, existing, and he'd known nothing. 6 months later, Golden Crumb Cafe's second location opened in Gangnam. Farida stood at the ribbon cutting, Minjun strapped to her chest in a carrier. Changmin beside her in a suit that probably cost more than the cafe's monthly rent. Cameras flashed. Journalists asked questions. The syndicate wife who'd become a businesswoman. The Mafia heir who'd chosen domesticity alongside empire. Are you afraid? One reporter asked. Farida looked at Changmin, then back at the camera. I spent 8 months afraid. Living small, staying hidden, believing fear would keep us safe. Didn't. So no, I'm not afraid anymore. What changed? I stopped hiding. She smiled. We both did. Their home, a real one now, not borrowed apartments or secret meetings, sat in Songbukdong. Traditional architecture with modern security. A nursery painted soft yellow. A kitchen that smelled like butter and fresh bread because Farida tested recipes there at dawn. Changmin still ran the syndicate. Still made decisions that shaped Seoul's underworld. Still carried the weight of power and consequence. But he came home to baby laughter and flour-dusted counters. To a wife who challenged him, protected herself, built her own empire one pastry at a time. To a son who would grow up knowing his father chose truth over tradition. No more shadows. No more secrets that could be weaponized. Just life. Complicated, dangerous, beautiful. Lived entirely in the light. Changmin woke to the smell of cinnamon. For a moment he didn't move. Just lay in the pre-dawn darkness. listening to the house breathe around him. Minjun's soft sounds through the baby monitor. Farida's movements downstairs. Rhythmic, purposeful. The quiet choreography of someone who created things while the world slept. 6 months ago, he'd woken to silence. To empty beds and forged documents. To a world built on control that had controlled nothing that mattered. Now he woke to life. He found her in the kitchen, flour dusting her forearms, testing a new recipe for the Gangnam location. Minjun dozed in his bouncer nearby, tiny fist curled against his cheek. "You're up early," Changmin said. Farida glanced over, smiling. Inspiration doesn't keep office hours. He poured coffee, hers with cream, his black, and settled at the counter to watch her work. The same way he had that first week, when she'd been a stranger plating desserts and he'd been a man who didn't believe in accidents. "Do you ever think about the cost?" she asked quietly, not looking up from the dough she was shaping. "Of what?" "Everything. The power. The choices. What you had to become to survive your world." Changmin was silent for a long moment. "Every day," he admitted finally. "I think about the men I've destroyed, the decisions made in blood, the version of myself I built because gentleness felt like suicide. Do you regret it?" "I regret that it was necessary. I don't regret surviving." He watched her hands move with practiced precision. "But you're changing the equation." "How?" "Minjun won't grow up believing power requires cruelty. That love is a liability. That the only way to protect what matters is to hide it." Changmin stood, moving to stand behind her, careful not to disrupt her work. He'll see his mother build an empire with flour and determination. See his father choose truth over tradition. Maybe he'll have options I never did. Farida leaned back against him briefly. "You're giving him what you never had." "We both are." Minjun woke with a small cry. Changmin lifted him before Farida could move, settling his son against his chest with the ease of practice. 6 months of midnight feedings, diaper changes, the intimate chaos of new parenthood. It had reshaped him in ways violence never could. "Hey!" he murmured against Minjun's dark hair. "We're okay. Everyone's here." The baby settled immediately, recognizing his father's heartbeat, his voice, his scent. This Changmin thought was power, not fear, not control, but the absolute trust of someone who knew you'd never let them fall. "I thought I understood strength," he said quietly. "Thought it was about never showing weakness, never letting anyone close enough to hurt you." Farida turned, watching him with their son. "And now I know strength is letting someone see you break and trusting they won't use it against you." He met her eyes. "It's choosing vulnerability when every instinct screams to hide. It's building something knowing it might be destroyed, and building it anyway." Later, as Seoul woke and light painted the kitchen gold, they sat together at the table. Minjun dozed between them in his carrier. Farida's new pastries cooled on racks, filling the air with sweetness. Changmin's phone sat silent, his empire running smoothly now that everyone understood the new rules. "Do you think we would have made it?" Farida asked. "If Sungmin hadn't manipulated us? If we'd just been allowed to be?" Changmin considered. "Honestly, I don't know. We were hiding even before he interfered. Building something in shadows because I was too afraid to claim you publicly. And now I know that fear doesn't protect anything. It just gives others ammunition." He reached across the table, lacing his fingers through hers. "We survived his betrayal. The truth surviving his lies. That's not luck, Farida. That's choice. We both chose to fight our way back." The morning stretched ahead of them. Golden Crumb staff would arrive soon. Meetings scheduled. The daily navigation of running both legitimate business and syndicate operations. The complicated dance of their blended worlds. But for now, this moment, they existed in earned peace. Minjun stirred, tiny hand reaching instinctively for his mother. Farida lifted him, and Changmin watched his family with something he'd never expected to feel. Contentment. Not the absence of danger, his world would always carry that. But the presence of something worth the danger. Worth every risk, every choice, every moment of vulnerability that terrified him. Fate hadn't arrived gently. It had crashed through cafe doors on a rainy morning, 8 months too late and exactly on time. It had demanded truth, courage, everything they were willing to fight for. And love, complicated, scarred, brutally honest love, had survived anyway. Not despite the chaos, but because of it. Because some things refuse to be destroyed. They just wait, patient and persistent, for the right moment to demand their place in the light. Outside, Seoul continued its endless rhythm. Inside, a family began each day choosing each other. Again, and again, and again. That was enough. That was everything. If you enjoyed the story this far, don't let it end here. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next chapter and enjoy more story from us. And if this story gave you chills, drop a like and share it with someone who loves powerful romance with a dangerous edge. Your support keeps these stories coming. Thank you.